When I opened my son's TikTok live, he had dumbbells zip-tied to his ankles and said, "Coach Bowden told us this is how Navy SEALs train," before jumping into the deep end. I was on my lunch break at work when I saw the notification pop up, and the second I clicked on it, my whole body went cold. My 11-year-old son, Martin, was sitting cross-legged at the bottom of the community center pool, cheeks puffed out like a blowfish, with what looked like 5-pound weights strapped to each ankle with plastic zip ties. There were at least a dozen kids from his swim team gathered around the edge of the pool, and I could see the timer in the corner of the screen already at 50 seconds. Comments were flooding in saying, "Beat the record," and "You got this, Martin," and I immediately called the community center, but nobody picked up because practice had ended 2 hours ago. I called Coach Bowden and it went straight to voicemail, and when I looked back at the screen, I realized there was no lifeguard, no adults anywhere, just a bunch of 5th graders cheering my son on while he sat at the bottom of an 8-foot pool with weights he couldn't remove. I grabbed my keys and sprinted to my car. The community center was 5 minutes away, and I was going double the speed limit with my phone propped against the dashboard so I could watch the live while I drove. The timer hit 1 minute 15, and the kids started chanting his name while Martin gave a thumbs up to the camera, and I called 911 and tried to explain that my son was drowning himself for a TikTok challenge, but the dispatcher kept asking me to slow down and repeat the address. 1 minute 45, and I could see Martin's face starting to strain, his body doing these little involuntary twitches, but the kids just cheered louder because they thought he was putting on a show. "Come on, Martin, you're almost at the record," one of them screamed, and the comments were going insane with fire emojis and legend and don't give up. I blew through a red light and nearly sideswiped a pickup truck. 2 minutes 15, and Martin's movements were getting jerky and uncoordinated, his eyes wide open now and clearly panicked, and I watched him reach down toward the zip ties, but his fingers were clumsy and useless from the oxygen deprivation. He couldn't get them off. He was trying to kick toward the surface, but the weights were too heavy, and he just kept sinking back down, and the other kids had finally gone quiet because something was obviously wrong. The comments started changing from legend to "Is he okay?" to "Someone help him," and I watched one of the boys jump into the pool and swim down to Martin, but when he tried to pull him up, he couldn't lift the extra weight and came back up gasping and crying. 2 minutes 30, and I screeched into the parking lot to find the pool area locked with a chain and padlock because the facility was technically closed after hours. I could hear the kids screaming through the fence, and I could see them through the gaps, some of them on their phones probably calling their parents, others just standing there frozen and sobbing. I looked at my phone and Martin had stopped moving completely, his arms floating limp at his sides, his eyes half open and staring at nothing while 800 strangers watched my son die on a live stream. I climbed that fence so fast I tore my palms open on the chain link, dove into the pool fully clothed, and had to drag my son's limp body plus 10 pounds of dead weight all the way up from 8 feet under. I barely made it to the surface before my lungs gave out, and I was doing CPR on the pool deck when the ambulance finally arrived. Martin survived, but the doctors told me the oxygen deprivation caused permanent brain damage because I was 45 seconds too late. I drove straight to Coach Bowden's apartment, and when he opened the door, I shoved him against the wall and screamed in his face about what his stupid story did to my son. He just shrugged and said, "I told him whoever could hold their breath the longest would get a spot on the team. I didn't think any of them would actually try it with weights." I told him my son had permanent brain damage and would never be the same again, and Coach Bowden looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Well, maybe you should have taught him not to believe everything adults tell him." I dragged him to the apartment complex pool and held his head underwater until he stopped moving, just to see how long he could hold his breath.